Case file number 3454, written by Commission OK 7210. In the Hour of the Cookie. When I was in high school, my boyfriend and I drove a half hour to a 24/7 bakery. When we walked in, the girl behind the counter and I screamed with joy and ran into each other's arms. This was before social media, so you really could lose track of someone. It felt miraculous that we were both there at that moment. We were both near tears, hugging, saying, "I thought I would never see you again." My boyfriend finally asked who she was. Here's the thing, I couldn't remember her name, but it seemed so ludicrous that I wasn't even embarrassed. I said, "Oh my God, you won't believe this, I can't remember your name." And she said, "Oh my God, I can't remember yours either." And we laughed. So my boyfriend, obviously, asked how we knew each other. I immediately assumed community theater because that's how I would have known someone from half an hour away at that age. She had never done community theater and didn't know anyone who did. It turned out she lived half an hour from the bakery in one direction and I was half an hour in the complete opposite direction. So we were a full hour apart. We ran through everything starting with preschool for almost a full hour. Like, do you know this person's cousin? No. Did you go to this one academic competition in middle school? But we couldn't find a link. We had no shared interests at all. But we both said the more the conversation went on, the more sure we were that we knew each other. We recognized each other's laughs, mannerisms, etc. After about an hour, she gave us a bunch of free cookies and we had a long, emotional hug goodbye. We both said, "Someday we'll realize it." 20 years later, I have never figured it out. I am half convinced I knew her in another life or timeline. My then boyfriend said the whole thing was very unsettling to watch and felt very off. So as most people who watch this channel regularly know, I'm a big fan of the simulation theory. I think it fits the most out of all the glitches I've absorbed over these years. It just seems to fit the most. There's so many little ones too that, like the dark dot, or the black dot rather, the sun blinking out, so many things point to server processes failing or error correcting code not being perfect and taking a moment to apply. And then you get things like this where you can imagine reincarnation. There's a spiritual angle to that, but you can simply translate it into simulation theory too. We exist in the real world, and this is basically a highly realized, highly cinematic, highly complex MMORPG. And when we load in, our memories are suppressed of the real world. But perhaps that suppression technique isn't perfect and flawless. And if we do meet another player that we knew from a different play session, you could say, then yeah, we still can be connected, even though we don't know them in this world. So you don't know any memories from them because it's a different server. It's a different game save, you could say. So you didn't know them in that context, but you know them through the real world or past lives of play sessions. I just find that so fun. And you can kind of connect that to soulmates, but it's really just soul friends. Yeah, I like that. Plus you got free cookies out of it. So I mean, even if it's not a glitch, that's just fantastic. Welcome, I'm Paul, this is Dave. Today I have 9 Glitch in the Matrix and paranormal stories for you. My favorite 2, I would say. First one involves Patrick. You can kind of combine them. Okay, I don't want to say too much. Patrick and a coin toss. Let's go. Case file number 3455, written by Crystal Lightly. Flecks of White. In my house, there have been small, scary things that have happened. So I often like to have a cat in my room with me overnight. Of my several cats, for a while now, I have preferred Cece because she behaves very well in my room. So last night, I went to the bathroom and at least a couple cats followed me in, including Cece. And one reason why she comes in is because that is when she feels comfortable using the litter box, so that she won't be attacked by our bully cat. I then went to the kitchen to get a snack to take to my room. I looked at the cats in the kitchen, and I was surprised to see Cece drinking from the water tray because I hadn't seen her pass me in the hallway. and usually she would wait near my bedroom door to come into my room at night. I wanted to be sure it was her, so I looked and saw her gray fur with flecks of white and the shape of her tail, but I only saw her back, not her face. I left the kitchen with my snack and went back down the hallway. When I got to my room, I saw Cece come out of the bathroom and walk to my door so she could come in. I was surprised because I was sure I had just seen her in the kitchen. Of my other cats, there is one more that is gray. Her brother is all dark gray, but I specifically looked for the white flecks in her fur, and I believe that I saw them. Their mother is also dark, but she is a calico cat who is mostly brown with patches of tan and orange, and I would have seen those patches. Her sister is tan and gray, mostly tan, so it couldn't have been her. Did my cat teleport to the kitchen to drink some water before she came into my room for the night? Maybe. I'm okay with that because Cece is a sweet cat, and she wouldn't have teleported just to scare me. Case file number 3456, written by The Internet is a Box. The sound without footsteps. Wintertime. I was walking home from the store at around 9 or 10 o'clock, aka pitch dark, and I was taking the quick way home, which happened to be typical park trails. Nearing the tiny bridge that crosses a stream pretty much next to my house, there is a sort of eerie part of the path. The streetlight responsible for that area is broken. Has been for as long as I can remember. City workers are terrible, huh? But the streetlight before it gives off just enough light to be able to slightly see there. As I'm walking home, full of glee and a bag of Doritos or something of the sort, I notice a tall man walking towards me, and he is basically completely a shadow. Not unusual, it's very hard to see someone walking in that area. However, I could not hear his footsteps in the snow. It didn't occur to me how weird that was until after, I guess. Kinda brushed it off at the time, probably because of what he did. The man figure just turned and walked into the patch of forest there, which is probably about 4 to 5 feet of scarce trees and fences for people's backyards. I started freaking out at this point, wondering what this dude was going to do to me. I mean, he has to be pretty crazy to just walk into the forest and fence of someone's backyard, right? Anyways, I kept walking nervously, constantly checking the trees next to me, and when I got to the point where I saw him turn in, I looked extra hard. No one was there at all, not even footsteps going in. I also looked at the fences for gates and boards on the side for easy climbing, but neither were there. These are also fairly high fences, so I either would have heard him jump up the fence or fall on his butt after attempting. To this day, I still never walk down that path at night, and when I walk down the perpendicular path, I always have to look down that path just in case. I think there are 2 things in horror that terrify me the most. The first is very tight, confined spaces with a monster. If you ever saw The Descent, you'd understand exactly what I mean. And the other is monsters or entities that can float. They don't make any sound. They're just there hovering, and they're moving silently. That's just so creepy. I don't know, maybe it's a control issue. If you can't hear them, you have no chance. Like, they can just pop up behind you and you're already done. Very creepy. So terrifying. Case file number 3457, written by Badgster. Gramps Late Night Mix. My ex-guitarist lives with his grandmother. His grandfather used to live there too, until he passed away a couple years ago. Anyways, his grandmother spends all day watching Wheel of Fortune and playing bingo on the weekends, while we would record and play video games or whatever else in his half of the house. One night, we were up late mixing our first EP when we heard the TV come on really loud. We went out there ASAP to shut it off before it woke his grandmother, and the TV was on full blast on ESPN. The couch had been shoved to the back wall, and his grandfather's old recliner was in the center of the room, fully reclined. We shut off the TV and quietly moved everything back to its original position, while he casually told me about his deceased grandfather and how the recliner I was in the process of moving was his, and how ESPN was the only channel he watched, and that the TV probably came on because Gramps was sick of hearing our crappy rock and roll. The creepiest part about it was how serious he was, Like it was a normal freaking thing. Very short thought on this one. I just want to say that if I was a spirit, I would be doing two things. Pranking people and assuming I couldn't eat food anymore, which would be hell on earth. So I don't want to be a spirit. If you can't eat food, what's the point? But, I mean, if I was stuck there for some reason, I would just be watching TV. And I'd probably try to switch to my channel if I could. Maybe that's tricky. Maybe you can't always do it. But yeah, when no one else is around, just put on the TV. Case file number 3458, written by Wyme117. Commando mode. The first event happened when I was in the first or second grade or so. Both my parents were working. It was summer, and my brother and I needed a babysitter. We stayed with my dad's boss's daughter at their house. She was 16 or 17, I'd say. We'd been staying there for a few weeks, very uneventful. One day, there was a knock at the door, and she wasn't expecting anyone. So we got into commando mode and crawled through the house to see who it was. A scraggly looking guy is there. He has a 3 or 4 day beard, t-shirt that is stained and hole filled, and he has a bike parked in the driveway. We report back to her, and she doesn't know who it is, so we decided it is best to go hide upstairs. All the while, he is beating on the door. Eventually it stops. We wait a couple minutes and crawl to the window to look, and he's riding in circles in the street. I'm still in commando mode, but he spots my brother and immediately goes back to pounding on the door. After what seemed like 30 minutes, he stopped and crawled to the window, and we saw him riding off, and he rode out of the neighborhood. We didn't see him again, and the whole time, none of us thought to call 911. Their house is in an upper middle class neighborhood where suspicious characters typically get reported, but during the middle of the day, I guess no other neighbors saw him. The second thing happened around 2000 or so. We went camping at Kerr Scott Reservoir in Wilkes County, North Carolina. Pretty soon after I got home from my second year in college. We took my then 10-year-old golden retriever camping with us at that time. I was walking her one night, and near the shower houses, there was a little gated cemetery. As we got closer, she started acting scared, and before we made it to the fence, she dug her claws into the asphalt and would not move. She planted herself. I could not get her to move, so I turned around and went back. Nothing felt weird or anything to me, but to her it did. We walked by the next day in daylight, and she did just fine. It was very strange, but something terrified her that night. Case file number 3459, written by Babushka 6. The Patrick Paradox. It was August 2017, the night of the Mayweather vs. McGregor fight. I was at a pub with some friends, waiting for the fight to begin. There was an empty chair next to me, because my sister was running late. I felt a tap on my shoulder, and someone asked, "Do you need this chair?" As I turned around, I said, "Yes, sorry, my sister's coming." When I fully turned around and looked at the person, I realized that I knew him. It was Patrick. I got excited because I felt like I hadn't seen him in a while. I said, "Oh my God, Patrick, it's been so long." He also got excited, knew my name, and gave me a hug. He sat down next to me and we started catching up. The usual, got a new job, I finally graduated, I moved out, etc. We had been talking for a bit when my sister finally came, made introductions, and then asked, "So, how do you guys know each other?" We both got quiet, and after a few seconds, I laughed nervously and said, "I'm sorry, I literally don't remember where I met you." Patrick got serious and said, "Yeah, me neither." My sister said it was weird, but went back to her conversation with another friend. Patrick and I started brainstorming about where and when we could have possibly met. We talked about where we went to school, different events we went to, where we live, etc. I live in Montreal, where this was taking place, and he lived in Toronto, and he said he was just visiting friends in Montreal. At this point, I had never been to Toronto, so we established we must have met during one of his visits. He told me the names of all his friends in Montreal, and I didn't know anybody. We found each other on Facebook, and had no mutual friends. We thought that maybe one of us unfriended the mutual friend, so we exchanged phones and went through each other's friends lists. Nothing there. no similarities. I asked him if he remembered what color my hair was last time he saw me, since I used to change my hair color rather often, and we could use this information to pinpoint the year and month we met. He got quiet again, thought for a few seconds, and said, "I literally have no memories of you." I realized I had no memories of him either. We talked for a bit longer, then the fight started and he went back to his friend group. At the end of the night, he came to say goodbye and vowed to remember where he met and to message me as soon as he did. We added each other on Facebook, but I ended up unfriending him a few years later. It's been almost 10 years, and I still have no idea when I met him. When I saw him on that warm August evening, I got such a warm and fuzzy feeling, and got instantly excited about seeing him, like my body reacted to him before my brain could process it. I'm absolutely convinced I knew Patrick in a parallel universe, past life, whatever it is. So another case of probably just knowing someone from the real world, but it is interesting that just knowing them from the real world, it creates like a signal feedback when you're near them, but it doesn't mean that you're going to be friends in this reality. You just know that they were relevant to a past life, a past experience, even if you can't pinpoint it through memories in this universe, in this timeline. Though I do wonder if I ever encountered someone that I felt like I knew them, but obviously there's no memories that connect us, no past history that connects us, so we never really met in this reality. Would I try to force a relationship? Maybe that's a mistake. I mean, you get a sense, but memory suppression, if this is a simulation, is a core feature, so maybe don't. Maybe just because you knew them in a different play session doesn't mean you should know them in this one. Case file number 3460, written by Errant Traveler. The Mechanic's Curse. I lived in Orlando for about a year in my early 20s, met a girl and started dating her. Then I got a job in Atlanta, which I took, but my girlfriend stayed in Orlando for the next 9 months. Needless to say, I drove down there about every other weekend to see her. The drive from Atlanta to Orlando is about 8 hours, and takes you through some of the loneliest parts of rural Georgia along the way, and you more or less have to go through Macon, Georgia. Macon is an old town by American standards. Rose Hill Cemetery, alone, has headstones going back over 200 years. It was also the site of one of the Confederate prisoner of war camps during the American Civil War. This camp, Camp Oglethorpe, has been described as that thing of infamy. Lots of people report creepy crap happening in this town, but what happened to me didn't happen in Macon. It happened about 40 minutes south on I-75. I had just spent the weekend with my girlfriend in Orlando and was driving home to start another work week. I abhor traffic, so I always make long-distance drives at night unless some outstanding circumstances force me to drive during the day. So I'm driving north, and it's around 4 in the morning. I'm wide awake, as I've been drinking Mountain Dew for the past 5 hours. The highway is empty and dark. There are no highway lights, and no other cars as far as I can see in either direction. The signs are telling me that I'm about 40 miles from Macon. I was just finishing up a cigarette and glanced down to my left to locate the automatic window switch so that I could toss the butt out of the window. In that split second, an elongated hand, almost completely emaciated, translucent, and light blue, comes forward past my head over my shoulder. My entire body freezes up, and I watch as this hand and arm continue forward. The hand grabs at the steering wheel, and just like that, disappears before my very eyes. I don't think there has ever been any time I've ever been so scared before or since. For the next 3 miles, I barely moved enough to keep the car on the road, and it was 15 minutes before I could work up the courage to look in my rearview mirror. I imagined that I was going to see a whole squad of ethereal soldiers taking a ride in the bed of my pickup truck. But when I finally mustered up the courage to glance back, I found nothing. As terrifying and bizarre as that occurrence was, I was much later willing to write it off as some kind of bizarre hallucination, if not for what happened next. Several months later, I went down to Orlando again, and while there, my girlfriend asked me if I would go down to Tampa with her to see some of her old friends. I readily consented, savoring the prospect of a road trip, regardless of length. When we arrived, We went to a friend's house, and people started dropping by to say hi. After a couple hours, one particular person shows up. Let's call him Jay. After chatting with my girlfriend for a few minutes, Jay and I strike up a conversation, and being unfamiliar guys, the conversation moves fairly quickly towards cars. Jay tells me that he has a 1966 Mustang that he has been restoring. He'd just finished the motor, and it's what he had driven over. He asked me if I'd like to hear it, and being an avid car fan myself, I agree, and we head outside. Sitting at the curb is a car, and let me tell you, it was pretty rough in terms of body and interior, but I was willing to let that slide as I tend to appreciate mechanics more than aesthetics. I slide into the passenger seat and him into the driver's seat. Jay fires up the engine and starts revving it. We're both enjoying this for about a minute when suddenly there comes an enormous bang, but the engine continues to run. Jay looks at me in confusion and I return the gesture towards him. However, our puzzlement was not to last as two things happened simultaneously about 10 seconds later. 1. Steam starts coming out of the hood, and 2. I notice a trail of what appears to be transmission fluid working its way down the gutter. Jay shuts off the car, pops the head, and both of us get out to take a look. We determine that his water pump had seized. When that happened, the shaft coming out of the water pump attached to the cooling fan snapped. And for a brief second, that fan became a propeller and ate a perfect circle in his radiator before bouncing off his transmission and cooling lines, slicing through both and wedging itself in a corner of the engine compartment. After sorting through the mess with him, it became time to go for my girlfriend and I, so we bid adieu to Jay and went back to Orlando. The next day found me in my truck and winging my way back to Atlanta. I was about 50 minutes south of Macon when I called my roommate to give him a rough idea of when I was going to be home, and while I had him on the phone, I decided he might like to hear that story. So, I relate the entire tale of Jay to him, and after finishing the tale, both of us started to laugh. But my joy was not to last. About 3 seconds into my laughter, I heard an enormous bang, and my truck started behaving funny. Praying I simply had a flat, I told my roommate I had to go, and made my way to the shoulder, but I knew what it was already. I knew as soon as it happened, and my worst fears were confirmed as soon as I popped the hood of my truck. My water pump had seized, the fan shaft had broken, and my cooling fan was wedged in my radiator. I then had to sit on that lonely piece of interstate for the next 4 hours, waiting for my roommate to arrive with his truck and a tow dolly so that we could get my truck back to Atlanta. That was a horrible 4 hours because I knew something was there with me. Case file number 3461, written by Hossman. A dark coin toss. My friend and I had developed a habit of convening in the evenings at our local Dunkin' Donuts to discuss current events, religion, and the mysteries of life. As high school students, we enjoyed the luxury of time during the summer months. As time passed, we found few topics that between us had not been discussed or debated to exhaustion, though we continued to meet increasingly later each night. Soon we took to exploring the town, driving until we had become tired of exploring. Our direction was often determined by the toss of a coin, heads for left, tails for right. Try this. It is surprising how often you'll find yourself having returned to your place of origin. It was all the while uneventful. The frequent pauses in conversation and yawns at the same day signified the end of our adventures. Until that night. We had explored, not by means of chance this time, to a road which, by day, was busily traveled. Late this night it was calm. 1, 2, maybe 3 pairs of lights passed us as we drove on, our instincts guiding us somewhere that we set out to have never been before. I noticed it only for a moment at first. The poorly lit sign of an old mining company that soon we both recognized having seen a dozen times under the sun. In an instant, we both had realized that this was going to be our next adventure. What little we had experienced together thus far would be shadowed by the memory we share of what followed our right-hand turn on the dirt road, signs marking Blank Mining Incorporated. We crept along in the darkness, unafraid. The new thrill had woken our spirits and we drove on eagerly. We followed the thin dirt road for what could not have been more than a minute. A split in the road had forced us to choose. We stopped, we waited. I remember the hum of the engine idle, waiting for us to decide. We chose and lurched forward. We would go left. We continued on, 10 miles an hour, 15 sometimes, speeding up and slowing to observe our surroundings. The world beyond our road was bleak. The grasses were grown out and seemed as though they had never been touched, leaning in unison. 20 minutes, 30 maybe, had passed with nothing unusual, except perhaps, yes, walls of dirt on either side of us began to rise. Waist high, car high, and then we found ourselves entirely isolated from the world. Now it was us, our two-seaters, the headlights, and that dirt road. So much time had passed that now we felt desperate to see anything. Finally, a break in the wall. A narrow, muddy road to our left had appeared. Behind it is an abandoned 2-story building. Overgrown weeds had climbed up the side of the building. 2 old rusted lamps had lighted the grassy field. If the driveway had not been muddy and impassable, I fear I would know far more about that building than I would like. So we kept on, leaving that empty place. We would never return. I do not think I have ever wanted to get away from something so badly as I did that building, those lights, and the unhappiness I felt looking at it all. My heart had slowed its pace at the thought that I would not be asked to leave the safety of our vessel. I would have wagered that this was the most thrilling encounter of that night. It was not. On we drove, the walls endless and solid, drowning us in the muffled sounds of the engine and the occasional clearing of throats and licking of lips. Then, there. The perfect reflection of our headlights. Yet how? It took only a fraction of a moment for us to realize that we were approaching another vehicle. It was parked and to our right, facing us. There it was, 60 yards from us, a Jeep Wrangler, topless. We had not noticed until now, truly the width of the road. The dirt road was wide enough for 3 lanes and tapered on either side, the sort that makes you believe rain could never puddle in the middle. We approached with caution. No, not caution, fear. I desperately wanted to hear anything but the engine and the nervousness in our throats. I rolled down the window. We crept. We did not speed up. We dared not slow. It came closer to us until we were upon it. I listened hard, the hardest I have ever listened in my whole life. My eyes fixated on the silhouette of metal, tires, doors, steering wheel, and face. In the night, perhaps in the faint light of the moon, I met him. I stared into him as he did I. I have never known a grimace so cold and disturbed as the one I knew in that moment. Something else was there with him. Someone else sleeping? Go, I whispered. My eyes were stolen from me as we passed. Go, I said for sure this time, grasping myself from the stranger. I turned my gaze. We fled desperately. I feared to turn back. I felt as though if I had, he would be there, behind me, waiting, begging for me to look. 30 seconds, 40 seconds. This road, this straight dirt wide road with walls that imprisoned us would never end. It couldn't. I knew for sure that we would drive until we were dead. We would run forever. I could not wait any longer. I had to. I had no choice. I turned back to feel my heart skip beats, to choke a swallow, and the thing I feared most had happened. Red lights came on in the darkness that never promised safety. White lights, a pair of them. We sped, faster and faster and faster, yet until the fear of what was behind us consumed our fear of uncertainty that lay ahead, and in the quickness of the world that passed us. The lights grew brighter. We did not speak. I gazed backwards all the while in disbelief as my friend drove on, clutching to a possibility that we would escape from this whale. We had to try something, anything. We crossed into a madness that neither of us were prepared for. I thought of nothing but escape. The road was no longer as straight as it once was. Our wake kicked up clouds of dirt and gravel behind us. In the chaos of my mind, both of our minds, we had failed to notice that trees began to sprout all around us. Big, thick, beautiful trees. The trees, I said. We both knew. We waited for the moment we needed, speeding on until a brief window had arrived. We did not hesitate. We stopped quickly and pulled around until we had concealed ourselves behind a tree, now facing the road. Engine on, lights off. I do not recall breathing in those moments. He was further behind us than we had initially determined, but we waited only seconds more in horror and relief as he sped by, his motives unknown to us. "Follow him?" I said, almost a question. I actually spoke those words. And so we betrayed our cover to become the wolves. We made no real effort to pursue it, though. With our lights off and our hearts unwilling to endure much more, we called off our hunt rather quickly. We followed the road until it was paved, turning where we thought might lead us away from our past. It wasn't long until we came upon a gas station. One large lamp lit the station, and we found our place of solitude and hiding. We sat for what was equivalent to the entirety of my life. We were free. We were free to be boys again, debating in the bliss of our ignorance. We laughed and made all sorts of noises, but it would not last. And too quickly this feeling escaped me. My face straightened. A brilliant chill ran down my back and into my arms. I wanted to die. I wanted to go to sleep and never wake. We were not free, we were lost, and we knew of only one way home. We spent far too long delaying what we knew to be our only option, and so we thrust ourselves onward. One final adventure, home. We returned to that road, the place we thought we had bargained our freedom from. We drove carefully this time, observing the road should he be laying in wait. The same trap we had set earlier. On and on we went. The wind in my hair, almost enjoying the return trip, convinced myself that we had nothing to fear. I was afraid. I was afraid of what I knew was waiting for us. We drove forever, back the way we came. We drove until we knew it was coming. The familiar reflection of our headlights in the black Jeep Wrangler. The terror in my eyes. We did not stop. We had simply come too far for it to all unravel now. My friend did not look. He knew everything he needed to from my silence as we passed the Jeep one last time. No man, no face, no accomplice. We didn't speak again that night. As time went on and summer winded down, our midnight Dunkin' debates became less regular. We were never really sure what I saw in the passenger seat of the Jeep, and I have never been back to that place, but maybe one day I will return. I've always wondered what secrets were kept from me in that old, abandoned building. Okay, this story is so well written. It's just a pure joy to narrate stories like that. I mean, I like narrating every story I read, even if the writing quality isn't Shakespearean, right? But when it is, such a high level, it's just special, you could say. And it makes sense, I don't know who this person is, but I would guess they're at least attuned to writing. And they, even like in the early part of it, where they're just meeting at Dunkin' Donuts for a debate club, like who does that? That's so cool. That's something, I never did that, but I kind of would have if I had thought of it. Debating ideas, honing them, I kind of do that all the time now, but just online, like on Twitter or X, Reddit, stuff like that. It's just fun to hone ideas in your mind and try to find the truth wherever that's possible. And as for the story though, man, I mean, the core question is what the hell was in that Jeep Wrangler? There was a person there. It could be something as simple as mundane as this was just a bad person. Maybe someone was trying to dispose of a body and they were trying to find somewhere remote to do it. Given it the abandoned nature, I don't think it was security or anything guarding an abandoned mining post. That would be odd. So probably just human nefarious activity, but who knows if it's even something worse. Case file number 3462, written by Juggling Monkey. Out of the Tank. I was a teenager and still lived at home with my parents. One weekend, they decided to go on a trip and leave me home alone for the weekend. I was in a deep sleep and was being woken up by a knock on my bedroom door. I was slowly waking up as a knock got louder, more like a banging. And suddenly I bolted up, realizing I was the only one at home, and yet someone was banging on my bedroom door. The knocking stopped. I sat up and was debating whether or not I should get up and open the door. After about a minute, I wrote it off as a dream. I laid back down and sure enough, it started again. Knock, 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 knock. I swear to you, I finally knew what it was like to almost crap your pants. Again, I was debating whether to open the door. I finally decided I had no choice and was about to get out of bed when suddenly I heard footsteps inside my bedroom right next to the door. It's pitch black and I can't see a thing, but I know I didn't hear the door open, so now I'm wondering if someone broke in. But my bedroom door was never open, so that means they were banging on it from the inside? I lay there waiting to get assaulted or something, and the steps slowly moved around my bed, but in a very strange route. Forward 2 steps, back 1, sideways 2, something like that. Also, the steps are very close together. Hard to explain, but in my still half-asleep state of mind, I imagined it was some sort of dwarf running around. I lay there for what had to be the longest 3 to 5 minutes of my life, as these footsteps went around my bedroom. When everything finally didn't happen for about 10 minutes or so, I decided I had to be imagining it. I mean, how could someone be inside and suddenly not move for that long? So I finally got up and turned on the lights. And there, next to my bed, was my dead pet fish? It was huge and must have somehow jumped out of the tank. The lid was closed and it was a heavy glass lid, so you can imagine the weight of the fish if it jumped, pushed the lid, and landed on the floor. Scariest night of my life, and I don't really think it's a fish. Now time for the jokes of the day. I asked a girl to go out with me, but she said that my face looked like the back of a boat. I didn't reply, but I gave her a stern look. I saw a bumper sticker that said, "Beware of the idiot behind me." So I followed him until I figured out who the idiot was. How many apples can you eat in the morning on an empty stomach? 1, because after that it's not an empty stomach anymore. Why don't bald eagles tell knock-knock jokes? Because freedom rings. I told my son that we're having Himalayan rabbit stew for supper. Sounds great, he said, but where did you get that rabbit? I found Himalayan on the side of the road. Video up here. YouTube thinks you'll like it. Check it out. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe. See you next time.